Thank you very much. We are now in item 12, proposed revisions to the rules of procedure of the General Assembly of the States Parties to the Convention. Mr. ADG, could you please present the background to this item?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This item concerns the initiative to harmonize the rules of procedures of the General Assembly of the Convention in the field of culture, and the working document 12 explains the background as to how it came about in a larger context of UNESCO-wide effort to improve its governance. The initiative to harmonize the rules of procedure across the Culture Convention dates back to 2015, when the 38th General Conference of UNESCO invited all conventions to discuss the follow-up to the recommendation of the external auditor report to improve their governance. The same session of the General Conference also established an open-ended working group on governance, procedures and working methods of the governing bodies of UNESCO, with the objective to pursue greater synergy, harmonization, efficiency and impact. The 39th session of the General Conference in 2017 subsequently examined the report of the open-ended working group and endorsed the group's recommendations. These recommendations are of particular relevance as they invite governing bodies of the Culture Convention through broad consultation to further explore, as appropriate, harmonization of the rules of procedures and coherence in decision-making procedures, taking into account their respective mandate and specificities. Regarding the 2003 Convention, its governing bodies have discussed between 2015 and 2019 the need to harmonize the rules of procedures of its governing bodies with the rules of other culture conventions. There is reference to the General Assembly Resolution 6.GA11, 7.GA12, and 7.GA13, and for the Committee Decision 13.com17 and 14.com19. The 8th session of the General Assembly in 2020 encouraged the culture sector to continue its effort of harmonization while inviting the Secretariat to submit a new draft consolidated version of the rules of procedure at its 9th session of the General Assembly this year. In view of the similar needs identified by the other assemblies of UNESCO conventions in the field of culture, the 41st session of UNESCO General Conference in 2021 examined a set of model rules of procedure for the Assembly of the Party to UNESCO's Culture Convention, from which the said assemblies may draw insights to explore possible ways to harmonize their respective rules of procedures as appropriate. This session of the General Assembly is requested to examine the proposed revision to the rules of procedures of the General Assembly. The Secretariat is pleased to be able to present the proposal response to the request made by various sessions of the governing bodies of the 2003 Convention. It is important to emphasize at this point that the model rules of procedure is not meant to impose any procedure or ways of governing conventions. It respects specificities and its practices of each normative instrument. Madam Chairperson, I'm going to pass the floor to Fumiko so that she can give an overview of the proposed revisions. Thank you so much.
Fumiko, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, ADG. Thank you, Madam Chair. So given the volume and technical complexity of the revisions proposed, the Secretariat invited state parties to the Convention to an online information and exchange meeting on the 31st of May this year to explain really in details, rule by rule, what the proposal looked like. And this session was attended by around 150 participants from 80 states parties. The document for that meeting included a comparative table which was used during the session to introduce the proposed revisions one by one with details of the proposal, reasons for the proposal, and sources of the proposal. The table included in Annex 1 of the document 12 in front of you is the same as the version issued for that information and exchange session, with the exception of minor linguistic adjustments that were pointed out by participants of that information session. The proposed revisions mean that the current 19 rules of the General Assembly will be revised to include 40 rules. The proposed revisions are presented as a table, and they are divided in 3 columns. The left column is presenting the current rules of procedure of the General Assembly. The middle column shows the proposed revisions to the rules based on the model rules, and showing with the use of strike through for the deletions and underline for the new wording to be able to show you clearly what are being changed and so on. The right column contains the explanatory notes, which shows the proposals together with the reasons behind such proposal and sources as appropriate. And these explanatory notes are based on the commentary explaining the model rules of procedure as contained in document 41C55. So now I would like to give you a really very quick overview of the main revisions that I try to show by chapter, if the technical team could display. Basically, there are, by chapters, new provisions that are coming in. For example, just as an example, and I'm not going to go into it for all chapters, but the proposed revisions start with a dedicated first rule on the functions of the Assembly, which does not figure in the current rules. Another example of the new provision concerns Rule 4, that establishes the conditions for the convening of ordinary and extraordinary sessions of the Assembly, which does not figure in the current rules, or Rule 5, that codifies the ways in which the date and place of the Assembly is determined, that once again is not in the current rule. The proposal also reflects lessons learned from the new ways of working together because of the pandemic, for example, and Rule 6 is about organizing online meeting of the General Assembly. Another examples of revision concerns, for example, linguistic revisions, and the model rules of procedure advocates the use of gender-inclusive language and refers to the United Nations guidelines for gender-inclusive language. So in this text, we are changing the expression he / she, it becomes she or he, and so on and so forth. So now the proposals that we tabled in front of you really follow very closely the model rules that were seen by the General Conference, but nevertheless on 2 provisions we are proposing a slightly different provisions, and I would like to mention them. The proposed Rule 11.11 replicates the current Rule 3 of the General Assembly of the Convention and formalizes the existing practice with respect to the election of the chairperson. The election of the chairperson, vice chairpersons, and rapporteur. The proposal is to reflect the practice of the General Assembly of this convention, as well as to keep it aligned to the practice of the Intergovernmental Committee and elect up to 5 vice chairpersons rather than up to 4 vice chairpersons as the model rule of procedure suggests. This is in order to ensure geographical equity, taking into account that the functions of chair and rapporteur are nominal appointments, and the practice of the General Assembly and Committee of our Convention is that the delegation of state party of the chairperson is seated in the Bureau to represent the electoral group of that state. The proposed Rule 12.2 replicates the current Rule 4.2 of the General Assembly of the Convention with harmonized terminology as regards the temporary replacement of the chairperson during her or his absence. The proposal is to maintain the well-established and well-functioning practice of your assembly so that the temporary replacement of the chair is to be chosen at the discretion of the chairperson rather than as the model rule of procedure suggests, basing the selection on the use of the French alphabetical order of the Bureau members. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, ADG.
Thank you, Fumiko. Thank you, ADG. I now open the floor to delegations who may wish to take the floor. I see now China. You have the floor.
谢谢主席。我们中方感谢秘书处为起草文化领域公约的大会议事规则范本所做的努力。对主要的修正案内容呢，我们不持异议。但是在附件当中的3.3条，对现行的议事规则有本质的改变，即我现在说的是3.3条，即总干事邀请的其他政府间组织和非政府组织代表以及其他代表或观察员，可以参加大会的工作，但无表决权，并须遵守本规则第16条第3款的规定。这是现在增加的3.3条。因为跟原来的议事规则有本质的改变，我们建议删除这一条，保留原来的2.2条的表述，就是现在新的议事规则当中的3.2条要按照原来的2.2条来表述，即总干事邀请的政府间组织和国际非政府组织的观察员可以参加大会的工作，但没有表决权，并须遵守本规则的第7条第3款的规定，作为新的3.2条。希望我说清楚了，非常感谢。
Thank you. France, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, les révisions proposées au règlement intérieur de l'Assemblée générale des États parties sont globalement positives, en ce qu'elles permettent de renforcer la précision du règlement, de la même manière que ce que nous avions évoqué précédemment sur la nécessité d'avoir des procédures plus précises. Cependant, le point relatif à la tenue des réunions à distance devrait être complété afin de garantir l'impossibilité que les votes puissent se tenir en ligne. Donc il faudrait avoir une disposition, comme nous l'avons dit lors de la réunion d'information, sur les votes et les modalités de vote. Merci.
Thank you. Are there any other requests for the floor? Venezuela, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Con aras del tiempo, nosotros nada más queremos apoyar la propuesta y las observaciones realizadas por la estimada delegada de China en cuanto a las revisiones y a las preocupaciones asociadas con invitar a observadores y el proceso para observadores a la Asamblea de Comité. Y aprovechando y escuchando, reaccionando ante lo indicado por Francia, nosotros preferimos mantener la providencia actual en la que establece que las elecciones se mantienen en persona, que ha sido la práctica y el acordado y el consenso alcanzado en los demás espacios de la UNESCO, tanto en el Consejo Ejecutivo, así como en otros espacios. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Turkey, you have the floor. Oh,
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like to echo what has been said by distinguished delegation of China. We are almost in some parts in favor of course, in rules of procedures that has been presented by Secretariat, but specifically regarding the paragraph, newly paragraph 3.3, we don't think that this paragraph is necessary, so we are in favor to deleting this, and we can work on the already the paragraph that had been in the rules of procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank our colleagues at the Secretariat for preparing this document for us. We believe that it is a good study, but might need some improvements as well. I would like to echo what our colleagues from the delegations of China, Venezuela, and Azerbaijan said. We think some revisions in these new rules of procedure goes beyond harmonization of the conventions. In that sense, we also prefer that we should work on the former version of the paragraph 3.3 and delete the current version. But also at the same time, we understand the needs of the Secretariat and we can offer some improvements to the 3.2 as well. Thank you.
I see Mauritania and Pakistan. Are there any more delegations that would like to speak? Seeing none.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La Mauritanie est favorable aux révisions, de façon générale, les révisions du règlement intérieur, mais soutient la position de la Chine et de l'Azerbaïdjan en ce qui concerne l'article 3.3. Je vous remercie.
Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your election. Pakistan would also like to support the comments that have been made by China, Venezuela, Azerbaijan, and also the proposal proposed by Turkey. Thank you.
Palestine and Oman, followed by Oman, and then we close the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, I appreciate the work of the Secretariat regarding the rules of procedure, and we appreciate the positive outcome. Nevertheless, we heard so many concerns regarding Article 3.3. Maybe with deleting the new article, we can go forward and adopt for the moment these amendments, noting that this is a continuous exercise. The amendment to the rules of procedure could be done later on if we feel that we need to do so. Regarding the meetings, hybrid meetings, or maybe we can keep it in mind, but the question of vote, it has been raised in other committees and other bodies. It remains difficult to hold elections, for example, online. So it is clear we can think about the hybrid meetings. For the moment, it is not clearly included, but we can keep it and keep the presential. So thank you again, and thanks for the Secretariat, and maybe we can go forward with the proposal of many delegations regarding Article 3.3. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Oman, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like also to thank the Secretariat and everyone have contributed to this rule of procedures. I would like also to support the amendment raised by China for the Article 3.3. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in the list is Kuwait. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for the report. Also, Kuwait would like to support the draft amendment submitted for item 3.3. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Grenada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would like, first of all, to thank the working group, as I had some logistical problems this morning. I came late and I had no possibility to thank the working group and its chairperson and the experts for the work done. I have two questions here. First of all, I would like to know when in one of the rules for the amendments of the rules, it is proposed to delete the plenary, and it is said in the comments that it's for more flexibility. I would like to know if it is not in the plenary, where can we take such decision? Why not in the plenary? It's just a question. And then I do approve what was said by Palestine. I think that we should have a possibility of having the meetings online and in presencia and hybrid meetings. We witness now the fact that we have difficulties to have intervention coming from colleagues who are not able to be here, experts who are in our capitals, and most of all, our secretary of the convention. So if we used to have the hybrid solution, I think that they would have been able to participate. I think so that we should keep the possibility of having hybrid meetings. And of course, for elections, we can consider some possibilities as it was done for the executive board. I think some work has been done and we can follow it. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In the speakers list, we have Kuwait, Switzerland and the Czech Republic. And after that, the debate is closed. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Bonjour, merci Madame la Présidente. Nous sommes un peu confus avec la discussion qui est en cours parce que nous avons des propositions 3.2 et 3.3. Et si on a bien compris, alors il sera question de enlever le point 3.3. Cependant, pour nous, alors ça fait c'est un package 3.2 et 3.3 parce qu'en fait, ça explique l'ancienne version 2.2, l'article 2.2, et nous ne voyons pas ou nous ne pouvons pas être d'accord avec l'élimination d'un des deux articles. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Merci beaucoup. And now we have Netherlands. You have the floor.
Republic Czech. Czech Republic.
Oh.
Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. And then Netherlands.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous voudrions tout d'abord féliciter le secrétariat d'avoir préparé les révisions de notre règlement intérieur, se basant sur le modèle approuvé par la conférence générale. Comme il s'agit de révisions techniques et pratiques qui ont été largement discutées, nous avons espéré de ne pas ouvrir le débat sur les différents articles. Mais ce n'est pas le cas. Et comme nos collègues de la Suisse, nous sommes un peu confus car il nous semble que l'ancien article 2.2 a été coupé en deux nouveaux articles 3.2 et 3.3 et il nous semble qu'il est impossible de biffer l'article 3.3 car cela voudrait dire que les représentants des organisations intergouvernementales ou non gouvernementales ainsi que d'autres observateurs ne pourraient pas prendre part à nos travaux. Donc, on aimerait bien poser la question au secrétariat si ce que proposent nos collègues de la Chine est vraiment possible. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. And since many questions have been addressed to the Secretariat, I would like to call on the legal advisor. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to you. The reason for my presence this morning is because, of course, this is quite legal in these terms, but I should point out that this has been the subject matter of an intensive work together with the colleagues in the culture sector, and in particular the Secretariat of the Convention, and I should say with also the personal and very valuable involvement of the ADG of Culture, and we're really very grateful for the tremendous work they have done on a matter that is purely legal. Madam Chair, in order to clarify matters and before answering the questions, I would like to introduce members of the Assembly to two concepts that might be useful later on for me to explain my thought on this. Article 13 of the Charter of the United Nations makes a distinction between what we international lawyers know as codification on the one side and progressive development on the other. When you draft a text, like this text here, you're actually doing two things. The first one, which we call codification, is basically reproducing things that already exist. It's rules that already exist. They may be put together in different ways, they may be explained better, but there's no change in what the rule is. Progressive development is the idea that we are trying to improve the rule, in trying to provide new ideas in order to, well, maybe make the procedure before the Assembly better. I have to say that a very, very big part of the proposals that are contained in this text are codification. They don't change anything that you have done, and there are some that are progressive development. They are new things. And if you were to read in conjunction the document that you have in front of you, in conjunction with the model rules with their commentaries, as was submitted to the General Conference of UNESCO, you will see that the commentaries make it actually very clear when it is that we are codifying things that you're already doing and when it is that we are proposing things that are new. With this in mind, I would like to answer the 4 questions that I understand were asked. The first question is with regard to Article 3.3, Rule 3.3. And this is in great part, but not completely, in great part a codification, so something that already exists. And what already exists is Rule 2.2. Let me read Rule 2.2 of the Rules of Procedure for better clarity, and I'm quoting. Representatives of the United Nations and organizations of the United Nations system and other intergovernmental organizations which have concluded mutual representation agreements with UNESCO, as well as observers of intergovernmental and international non-governmental organizations invited by the Director General, may participate in the work of the Assembly without the right to vote and subject to Rule 7.3. End of quote. So, the first thing to mention here is, if you look at Rule 3.2, first of all, you will see that Rules 3.2 and 3.3 have, as a matter of clarity, and in order to make a clear distinction between two kinds of observers that we have, the representatives of international governmental organizations that have mutual representation agreements with UNESCO on the one hand, that's 3.2, and the other organizations on the other hand, that's 3.3. 3.2 basically reproduces 2.2 as it is right now, only for UN and other organizations that have concluded mutual representation agreements. So it is a codification. It's something that is already there and it doesn't pose any problem. Rule 3.3 3, on the other hand, is also a codification. We just separated 2.2 into 2 different parts, so it remains a codification with one exception. The only exception is the addition of the terms as well as other representatives or observers. That is what we call progressive development, but it's also a practice that has actually existed in several conventions. So my understanding, and I'm talking here under the control of the distinguished delegate of China to ensure that I am correctly interpreting her words, my understanding is that a number of delegations do not agree, are actually in agreement with what the rules are, but might have doubts about this addition. And I understand the proposal not about deleting the entire 3.3, because if that were deleted, you would actually be changing the rule 2.2 as already exists, but rather as deleting as well as other representatives or observers, which is what is new in that provision. But once again, this is what I interpret from what I have heard, and I would be very grateful if I could have a clarification whether I haven't misunderstood what has been discussed. And of course, if the Assembly were to decide that that is what they want, well, that would be returning to what we already have, and it wouldn't pose necessarily a problem. I'm sorry, that was long, but that was just question number 1. Let me go to question number 2. The second question that was asked was with regard to voting online. So this refers to Rule 6, the new Rule 6 in the... just a second, people are writing to me. They have forgotten that I'm paid to assist the Assembly. Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure is on online sessions. And this, I should point out, is progressive development. It's a new thing. It's not already contained in the rules. And as you are well placed to know, this is a necessity that has arisen in the past couple of years because of the pandemic. Now, what we have taken out from these couple of years are 2 things. The first one is that it seems to be generally accepted now at UNESCO that when there are periods of emergency and exceptional circumstances which render meetings in presentia impracticable, that terminology, as you may remember, comes actually from the modalities that were agreed upon by the Executive Board for a possible online meeting of the General Conference. So I believe it's an acquired thing that in those exceptional circumstances, bodies at UNESCO should be able to meet online. And this Article 6.1 is to reflect that conviction that I believe is now generally acquired in the Convention. The second thing that has been problematic, though, is that in the past couple of years we have seen that there have been a lot of difficulties in not so much in the fact of meeting, but how do we decide that we meet online? What procedure should be applied to decide to meet online? And this is particularly acute for a body such as this General Assembly that doesn't have explicitly in its rules a possibility of consultation by correspondence, as for example the Executive Board has at UNESCO. So paragraph 6.2 and 6.3 aim at actually providing for a practical way of making such decision while respecting the majorities in the session. Now, the question that was asked by France is whether we should include in that provision a further paragraph that would say that when the session meets online, it cannot vote. It cannot vote, that no vote is possible. So this is a matter that you need to decide. It's up to you to decide whether you want to close the door of voting in any event whenever there's an online session. If you were to do that, then it's okay. I might have misunderstood what the French delegate said. In that case, I apologize. I saw that she raises her flag, but please let me know. So you may, if you wish, add a provision that says that. Just be careful of the fact that if you add a provision that says that no voting is possible in an online session, that means that no voting will be possible in an online session, right? You will not be able to vote in any circumstances in those cases. Third question that was asked was with regard to hybrid meetings. I have to say I have a little bit of, let's say, of concerns about the term hybrid, because it is a term that is not technically legal, it's not a legal term, and unfortunately it has been used to refer to meetings of different kinds, of different natures. For example, a meeting that where members are present and observers are online has been referred to as a hybrid meeting. A meeting in which some members, all members are present in presentia, but there has been some delegations that also have certain representatives online, but they also have in presentia. It has also been called hybrid. But then there's what I would call the pure hybrid, where you can choose, you can come in one way or another. And that one has posed a number of problems, and it is a little bit difficult to assess. So for the time being, hybrid meetings have been for governing bodies, for statutory meetings, have been very, very few at UNESCO. There have been very, very few meetings that were purely hybrid, in which basically a delegation could basically decide whether to be online or in presentia. And I have to say, it has posed problems. For example, not long ago in the 1970 convention, there were significant problems because one meeting was held in a hybrid format, and that raised quite a long debate in there. This is the reason why this is not proposed in the model rules. Last but not least, the question from Granada with respect to Rule 40, and that is the question with regard to whether for the amendment of the rules, why is it that in plenary meeting has been deleted? And that is for the purposes of more flexibility. That requirement of in plenary meeting is not actually required in, if you look at our commentary, you will see that some require it and some don't require it. If you put in plenary meeting, that means that for the suspension of the rules, you would need to meet in order to, because you would need to have a session. The majority of 2/3 stays, but you would need to meet in plenary meeting. And let me give you an example to try to explain why it might be useful to take out in plenary meeting, which is, I should point out for the purposes of this convention, what I have called a progressive development, but it is in line with what other settings at UNESCO have. And what does that mean? Let's imagine that you have to meet online because there is a pandemic, and you have to decide to meet online because there is a pandemic. And you don't, for some reason, we don't have interpretation in all 6 languages online, which, by the way, as you know, has happened in the past. In order to meet online, you need to suspend the rule that says that the languages of the convention are 6. Now, if we say that the suspension of that rule requires a plenary meeting, then you will have to meet online to suspend the rule that you are actually suspending by meeting online. So by taking out in plenary session, what you are basically allowing is for the possibility in an extreme scenario for a majority of 2/3 to be obtained through other means, such as a consultation by correspondence or something like that. That's what is the proposal here. Again, this is progressive development, as I called it before. Madam Chair, I'm so sorry for such a long intervention, but I hope it has been relatively clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Legal Advisor. Mr. Legal Advisor, after all the questions were asked. We have a list of speakers here. We start with the Netherlands. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very curious of the answer of China to the answer of the question of the legal counselor. Is it their intention to remove 3.3 entirely or only a part of the sentence? Either way, we would like to echo the Swiss and Czech delegation. We're strongly and principally opposed of removing 3.3. In our opinion, it's against the spirit of the convention. For example, this would mean that Laurier Turguian of the NGO Forum would not have been able to speak during this General Assembly. And we are in favor of the phrase as well as other representatives and observers. Thank you.
Thank you. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to thank Mr. Santiago, the legal advisor, for his explanation. I've listened also to the esteemed delegate of France in explaining why 3.3 should stay, because there are some parts deleted from 3.2. With that, I would like to support the deletion of 3.3, but maybe maintain the phrase as is in 3.2, which has as well as observers of intergovernmental, et cetera, So keep 3.2 as is without deleting the part and delete 3.3. I think this will solve the confusion that's being created. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to support my colleagues from Switzerland and Czechia when it comes to the Article 3.3, and I also would like to thank the legal advisor for his explanation. For us, it's quite clear why it happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est juste pour dire que nous soutenons les observations de la Chine, mais tout en tenant compte des explications du conseiller juridique. Donc, si on peut enlever la partie qui pose problème, la phrase de « ainsi d'autres représentants observateurs ». Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. France, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, de me redonner la parole. Oui, donc simplement pour préciser sur la question des réunions en ligne, donc il ne s'agit pas évidemment de ne pas avoir de vote du tout. Dans l'hypothèse très exceptionnelle, donc prévue dans les circonstances bien précisées dans ce projet de règlement intérieur, où il y aurait une réunion en ligne, il faut évidemment que l'Assemblée puisse voter. Simplement, le vote doit pouvoir se tenir en présentiel. Donc, il faut prévoir les conditions pour que les délégations puissent voter au siège en cas de réunion en ligne. C'est simplement ce point. Monsieur le conseiller juridique, vous avez très bien expliqué le point relatif aux réunions hybrides. Effectivement, dans les textes de l'UNESCO, il n'existe pas de concept de réunion hybride et on a vu que cela pouvait mener à une grande confusion et à des difficultés. Et donc, effectivement, les réunions sont soit en présentiel, soit exceptionnellement en ligne, à notre sens. Et il est en revanche possible d'inviter des experts à assister à une réunion à distance, mais étant entendu que statutairement, cette réunion est en présentiel. Et enfin, concernant le débat sur le point 3.3, la France soutient la rédaction actuelle. Merci.
Thank you. Cuba, you have the floor.
Sí, gracias, señora presidenta. En relación a las reuniones virtuales y híbridas, compartimos la preocupación también de algunas delegaciones que nos han antecedido. Hemos tenido ya una experiencia en estos 2 años de pandemia y nos hemos visto atrapados muchas veces por la poca claridad en este sentido, porque justamente es un escenario nuevo al cual no nos habíamos enfrentado. Para la delegación de Cuba es fundamental que las votaciones que tienen carácter secreto se hagan de manera presencial. Creo que no corresponderá en esta asamblea generar un precedente que también tiene un impacto sobre otros órganos que también han reflexionado sobre este proceder. Estoy pensando en el Consejo Ejecutivo de la UNESCO, que fue de los primeros órganos que se vio enfrentado a esta situación. Esta indefinición pues ha traído dificultades para el funcionamiento de las asambleas. Ahí tenemos la experiencia en la Convención de 1970, por lo tanto sería pertinente referir que las votaciones secretas tendrían que tener lugar de manera presencial, porque conocemos que es posible organizarlo y bueno, trabajar en este sentido. En cuanto a las reuniones híbridas también, hemos tenido dificultades. El sentido de una reunión híbrida siempre da precedencia a los que están en sala y se genera una división realmente un poco compleja a la hora de la participación. Por tanto, en la medida que sea posible, o tendrán que ser en línea o tendrán que ser presenciales, porque la formulación de híbrido siempre genera una precedencia a las delegaciones que están en sala. Y con respecto al 3.3, también preferiríamos que permaneciera la versión inicial. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Palestine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As regard for Article 3.3, I think I would like to address again a question to the legal advisor to clarify the issue of 3.3, which I understood that this was the practice, and we know that it was the practice and nobody was opposing it. This is the first thing. Second thing, it is included already in the original version, that the part that is deleted and that our colleague from Saudi Arabia proposed to have it again. So I think if we delete 3.3 and we come back to the original version as proposed by Saudi Arabia to 3.2, it settles the problem. But if I'm wrong, maybe the legal advisor will explain it better. Now, regarding Article 6 and the online or hybrid or presential meeting, I understand that the word or the terminology hybrid is not yet a legal term. But if our assembly adopts this wording, it becomes legally accepted. Now, there are some concerns, of course, when we hold online meetings. It is impossible to say that we can skip all kinds of votings and especially elections. With the current rule, there is nothing provided regarding the elections. If we hold an assembly online, purely online, we should have a provision for the elections, just like what has been done for the executive board. So we need to think about it seriously. Presential meetings are essential, but making it hybrid, it could help. But when it comes to online, purely online meeting, there is a missing provision regarding the elections. Now, regarding Article 40, deleting the plenary, with all my respect to the legal advisor, I didn't understand the explanation. What is the rationale behind deleting? Because even if, as you mentioned, we need to hold an online meeting and to suspend a rule, well, in that case, even if it is online, it is supposed to be plenary. A plenary meeting could be online or in the room, so I don't understand the scope behind it. And maybe I will have a little remark later regarding another article. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to take the floor once again. I think I wasn't clear enough in my previous intervention that we would like to have the 3.3 deleted, but we would like to keep 3.2 in its original form as the former 2.2. I would like to thank the distinguished ambassador of Saudi Arabia for putting it in a better way than I did. So, on the other hand, I would like to say that some delegations mentioned that we had some kind of extensive meetings about the rules of procedure, which, if I am not wrong, we held an information meeting on the 1st of May. And in that meeting, Mr. Tim Curtis, to whom we wish a speedy recovery, mentioned that it wasn't a drafting meeting. So he was gathering the views and concerns of the delegations, and during that meeting, some delegations, including my own delegation, raised this concern as well. So I would like to make it once again clear that we would like to have the old 2.2 as it is, and also we would like to comment on some other articles, but maybe at a later stage. I don't know how we will conduct this agenda item, if we will go through some kind of drafting, but I might need to take the floor to raise our concerns about some other items. Thank you.
Thank you. Grenada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would like to thank the legal advisor for his response. I do understand now about the deletion of the plenary, and maybe in this case, after listening to our colleague from Distinguished Ambassador of Palestine, maybe we could also put something about consultation by correspondence, because in this case, it's not really a plenary. I do understand, and I agree. Concerning the hybrid meetings, I do agree with previous speakers. In the executive board, we had this case. We were online, and for voting on some items, representatives of the members had to come to the headquarters. So if it's not called hybrid, we should call it something else. But I think with the evolution of the pandemic, we should be careful. And we have experienced meetings, hybrid meetings. The working group for the World Heritage Committee on Sites of Memories was hybrid, and it was functioning very well. I have not seen big problems. And I think that in the future, we can improve the processes. So let's think about it and not exclude it. And if we can find another word than hybrid, let's do it. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. China, you have the floor. It's now 1:02.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving China the floor again. I would like to speak in English. Maybe it's easier for us to understand and to save time. So the model rules of procedure that was prepared by the Secretariat and the legal office, it was put online just before the 41st General Conference of UNESCO at the end of last year. If some of the colleagues in the room were there in the discussion, we remember that the member states said we don't have enough time to review it thoroughly. And then the decision of the General Conference was to take note of the model document, and I just quote, for which the said assemblies may draw insight to explore possible ways to harmonize their respective rules of procedures as appropriate. So this is the decision of the 41st General Conference. And I thank the representative of Saudi Arabia and Turkey to explain my intention just to keep the original paragraph 2.2 to replace the current 3.2 and 3.3. We noticed that during the information session organized on July the 1st by the Secretariat, several countries, not only China, we raised this concern for the DG to invite those entities beside the current document. So that's our intention, just to keep the original paragraph 2.2 and delete paragraph 3.3. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, China. Just a little time check. It's now 1:05, and we have until 1:10 to occupy the room. So we'll call on some more speakers before suspending the session. Sweden and Venezuela.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I will speak about the proposal, the 3.2, former 2.2, and the 3.3. So basically, I thank the legal advisor of explaining and clarifying the different elements of codifying and being progressive. And I will share my interpretation of the progressive part, because I don't think anyone is opposing the codifying part. But what I'm reading in 3.3 is that the Director General is now, with this progressive part, being able to invite appropriate people to the General Assembly. That is my interpretation. So I hope that would be, and I think that is quite a good thing to do. When you need someone to discuss, there should be the experts, the appropriate experts. So that's my interpretation. And also, I would like to thank Saudi Arabia for the constructive proposal in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Venezuela, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Intentaré ser breve. Me voy a referir solamente en cuanto al punto 3.3. Nosotros, como ya lo han dicho varios colegas, preferiríamos retirar esto. Sin embargo, creo que la mayor problemática hace referencia a la parte que dice as well as other representatives. Como hemos visto en la discusión que se sostuvo en sala el día de ayer, etcétera, el proceso de acreditación de observadores, de ONG, es algo que es riguroso, es importante respetar y es importante preservar. Creemos que incorporar esto justamente eliminaría y diluiría este proceso, puesto ya entonces no es necesario para ser observador o ONG observadora acreditada pasar por este proceso para asistir y seguir las reuniones, las cuales ya están disponibles para poder seguir de forma de webcast. Por ende, nosotros preferiríamos retirar esta referencia y que se mantenga como estaba originalmente planteado en las versiones anteriores. Muchas gracias.
Thank you to all the speakers, and before we take the lunch break, I just would like to read the names of the next speakers in the list: Mexico, Colombia, Oman, Switzerland, Kazakhstan, and Syria. We shall resume after lunch. And before we go, I have a brief reminder. As we agreed yesterday, there will be a meeting of the informal consultation group on paragraph 7 bis under item 7. This will take place in room 6 from 1:30 to 3 p.m. with simultaneous interpretation in English and French. Thank you. Have a pleasant break, and please be back by 3 p.m. so that we could start promptly. Thank you.